So that's what y'all want to see, huh?
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Last week, obviously, I discussed the Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic trade and how that shocked the entirety of the sports world, and I also gave my preview on Super Bowl 59. And well, football season is in the books, but we have the UFL coming up in a couple months, so I guess football season's almost back again, but we have finally reached the end of the NFL season, and the Philadelphia Eagles took down the Kansas City Chiefs. I predicted it, but I did not predict it to be like this, and we are going to go over all of that. And as you all know, I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32, get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. So without hesitating anymore, let's just get right into it, and we're going to start with basically just an overview of how this game went. So in Super Bowl 59, the Philadelphia Eagles, who were 1-point underdogs, take down the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty and slay the three-peat attempt 40-22. Now, I don't think anybody on the planet saw this coming. I honestly can't tell you that this was no surprise to me. This was absolutely crazy. This was a beatdown of immaculate proportion. Do not even let the 22 points fool you from Kansas City. This was not even a close game at all. The way Philadelphia's defense played, this was probably the most dominant defensive performance I have ever seen in a Super Bowl. The last time I remember something like this happening, especially to Patrick Mahomes, it was the 2020 Super Bowl when Tom Brady was quarterback for Tampa Bay, when him and Gronkowski came out of retirement to humble Patrick Mahomes a little bit. Well, Patrick Mahomes sure got humbled again last night. So when you look at like the offensive performance from Philly compared to Kansas City, Philadelphia had 24 points at halftime. 24. It was 24-0. And Kansas City at that point in time had 23 yards of offense. Talk about complete, utter domination. This wasn't close whatsoever. When you look at Patrick Mahomes, 21 of 32, 257 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, sacked 6 times, a QBR of 11.4, and a QB rating of 95.4. Now, a lot of those stats are inflated because of the end of the game, but for the majority of this game, Patrick Mahomes had no time to throw whatsoever. This offensive line for Kansas City got completely exposed against this Philly front seven. It was absolutely crazy. You look at Kansas City's rushing, Samaje Perine had the longest run of the day for 8 yards for Kansas City, and the most rushing yards that Kansas City had came from Patrick Mahomes, 4 attempts for 25 yards. Now, this was obviously just improvising when the pocket collapsed, and believe me, that happened quite often last night. Well, 2 nights ago. Sorry, this is dropping on a Tuesday morning. But when you look at it, this Kansas City team could not even run the football with any sense of consistency. 11 carries, 49 yards total in the game. And that's just, listen, when you're in the Super Bowl, that's just not going to cut it. You have to be able to run the football. Now, when you look at, in contrast to Philadelphia, even they really didn't run the ball too well because, I mean, if you think about it, what is everybody trying to stop on Philly's team? Saquon Barkley. But I've told you guys multiple times, and I've told people this so many times over the past couple weeks, like, okay, even if you do slow down Saquon Barkley, you still have Devontae Smith to worry about. You have A.J. Brown to worry about, Dallas Goedert to worry about. That offensive line from Philadelphia is just, it's ridiculous. An average height of 6'6" and an average weight of like 340 pounds. That is just a bunch of behemoths on the front line. So this is like a dream offensive line for Philadelphia. The way Howie Roseman has drafted and manipulated free agency and, just went through it all. Howie Roseman, I think he's the best general manager in the entirety of the NFL. I don't think it's even close at this point. But when you look at Philadelphia receiving to Kansas City, obviously there's only one person on Kansas City that bothered to show up today, and that was Xavier Worthy, the rookie. 8 receptions, 157 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think Xavier Worthy is going to be a fine player in this league. I really do. He reminds me a lot of Tyreek Hill. He might be a Tyreek Hill light because I just don't think anybody, there's very few receivers that are actually better at route running and catching than Tyreek Hill, even though Tyreek Hill has issues with his hands every now and then, but that's what Xavier Worthy is. He was the Tyreek Hill replacement in this past year's draft. You need a home run hitter. I believe every NFL team needs a home run hitter. Now, you may not rely on him solely throughout the season, but at any given point, he can make a big play. And Xavier Worthy, for the most part, Patrick Mahomes targeted him 8 times in this game, and he caught all eight passes. Xavier Worthy, I'll give props where props is due. Xavier Worthy is going to be a fine player in this game. But if you look at the other receivers from Kansas City, now a lot of this has to do because of the relentless pass rush of Philadelphia. Travis Kelce was a non-factor. D-Hop was a non-factor. He has 1 touchdown, but it was just a simple out route in the end zone. D-Hop, he's old in age. Juju Smith-Schuster was a non-factor. He's up in age. Hollywood Brown really didn't do anything. Kareem Hunt didn't do anything. Isaiah Pacheco didn't do anything. None of these guys did anything. None of them did anything, really. This was just complete, utter dominance by the Philadelphia Eagles. This was just absolutely amazing and a true spectacle to watch. So that's basically the overview of the Super Bowl. This was just complete domination from the first quarter to the end of the fourth. No mercy was shown by Philadelphia. So now let's talk a little bit more in depth. So where do the Chiefs go from here? Well, I'm not one to believe that you, as the Kansas City Chiefs, need to tear the whole thing down. I don't. If you remember, there was a time in Tom Brady's career where he went 10 years between winning Super Bowls. He won 3 I believe it was 3 in the beginning of his career. Then he went on a 10-year span of where he did not make the Super Bowl whatsoever, and then he picked up right where he left off and won 4 more. So, do I think it's possible that Kansas City might experience something like Tom Brady in New England did early on in Brady's career? I think it's possible. Just because if you look at this the dynamic of this roster. So you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Obviously, those are fine. Those guys aren't going anywhere. At least I don't think so. But Patrick Mahomes, widely considered the best quarterback in the NFL. I'll still say right now he's the best quarterback in the NFL, but it's that gap's going to narrow over the next couple seasons, I'd say. But if you look at the running back position for Kansas City, Isaiah Pacheco, I'd keep him, even though I'd be hesitant to because now he's injury prone. Kareem Hunt, up in age and kind of brittle. Samaje Perine, he's been in the league a minute too. So running backs, you're going to have to address. Now, Kansas City's wide receiving core, that's a very interesting thing to talk about because you got Xavier Worthy. I think he's fine there. He's going to be a Chief for a long time. Xavier Worthy, like I said, he showed up for Kansas City at least towards the midpoint to late in the Super Bowl. Realistically, the Chiefs couldn't do anything for the first 3.5 quarters. For the first 2.5 quarters, I should say. They finally put a touchdown on the board at the end of the third quarter. But Xavier Worthy showed up when he needed to, so I think Xavier Worthy's safe for now in Kansas City. But looking at the other positions, you have DeAndre Hopkins. Do you bring him back or do you let him walk? Because he is old. He's up in age. Juju Smith-Schuster, you let him go before, and then you brought him back. Well, it might be time to let him go again. Travis Kelce. Now, Travis Kelce is an interesting one. Easily, probably a top 5 tight end of all time in the NFL. The run he was on for the past 5 years was nothing short of remarkable. But when you look at Travis Kelce, he's old, he's brittle, and he's getting expensive. I don't think you can run it back with Travis Kelce at this point in his career. It would not shock me if Travis decides to hang up the cleats and join his brother, Jason Kelce, in retirement. But when you look at Travis Kelce, his numbers significantly dipped. He has not had the same impact in the playoffs this past year as he has in years prior. So when you look at that, and he's expensive, you might have to move on from Travis Kelce if he doesn't decide to hang up the cleats. But realistically, I can see Travis Kelce hang up the cleats like real soon. I don't doubt that, because like I said, he's up in age. He's getting there. It's nearing the end of his career. So I talked about Xavier Worthy. I'd say keep him. D-Hop, Juju, Kelce. I think you're going to move on from those guys. Hollywood Brown. I mean, he's a hit and miss wide receiver. I think he's good depth to have on the wide receiving core. I think he's like a number 2 to it. Maybe. That's pushing it. He might be even a number 3 option on a lot of other teams in the NFL. So, I mean, I'm not sold on Hollywood Brown. I wasn't even sold on him when he played for the Ravens because he really didn't do much there either. So, he might just be, that might be what he is. Just a good number, a solid number 3 to a number 2 on an NFL franchise. And I'm not dogging him anything like that. I just think, he has so much more that he could prove and so much more that he can show. And I know, obviously, Rashid Rice was out for the year, and he didn't play. I don't necessarily know if that would have made that big a difference, especially when you look at this Philly team. But that's your receiving core going forward. I think it's going to be Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, whatever other moves you decide to make in free agency. And honestly, I can realistically see Travis Kelce, D-Hop. I could see those guys retiring, and I can see Juju Smith-Schuster going to NFL free agency and testing the market. I think someone would pick up Juju. I'd take him back on Pittsburgh. That couldn't hurt whatsoever. So let's talk about now the Kansas City defense. So for the most part, even though the scoreboard would suggest the way that Kansas City played the run against Barkley was spectacular. Barkley didn't have much room to run throughout the entire game. I will say that the Kansas City defense is the biggest reason that they got to the Super Bowl this year. Patrick Mahomes did not play well this year. Patrick Mahomes was in so many close games. I saw a crazy stat. I think it was in the last 19 one-score games that Kansas City has played in, they're 19-0. That usually does not happen. It doesn't. But when you look at this defense, yes, I think this is the main reason that they were in the Super Bowl. But at the same time, they had no answer for Jalen Hurts running the football at all, even though Steve Spagnuolo is a fantastic defensive coordinator and he will be in the Hall of Fame one day. They just got exposed. They had no answer for a guy like Jalen Hurts who runs the ball way more than, let's say, a Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen, I think, is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. But at the same time, Josh Allen used to be running the football everywhere. He used to be the main reason that Buffalo could move on offense via the run game. But when you look at Jalen Hurts, it's a completely different quarterback, in my opinion. He's not as big as Josh Allen, but he is as strong and he's faster than Josh Allen. I don't think anybody on Kansas City truly realized how much of a threat he was to run other than the brotherly shove or the tush push. But when you look at this, That was the main issue. And here's the thing about Philadelphia's receivers. Devontae Smith was a Heisman Trophy winner at Alabama. He would be a number one wide receiver on most teams in the NFL, not named Cincinnati, Philadelphia, or Minnesota. I think you could make the argument that Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and Jamar Chase are the three best wide receivers in the NFL. I think you can make that argument. And it just so happens Devontae Smith is on this team behind A.J. Brown. But I think that's just a reality about the Chiefs that they had to have noticed. They could not double A.J. Brown because of how much of a threat Devontae Smith was in the pass game, as well as Dallas Goedert. When you look at this, like Trent McDuffie is an all-pro level cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs. A.J. Brown pretty much had his way with him. Not really to the full extent of, 100-yard games here, like a 100-yard game. But when A.J. Brown needed to, he did step up. He only had 3 receptions for 43 yards, but he did have that 1 touchdown. And it seemed like, when it mattered most on a third down, a crossing pattern over the middle, A.J. Brown came down with a football that Trent McDuffie is so used to breaking up and making a play on. But that's just the reality of Philadelphia and how star-studded their offense is. There's not many changes I would make to Kansas City's defense as a whole. I would say probably need more help with the pass rush. You can't just rely on Chris Jones the entire time. The secondary definitely will need work, but a lot of secondaries in the NFL need work, and, people address that in the draft. So that is the reality of Kansas City. Like, going forward, what can I see out of Kansas City in the future? I don't think Patrick Mahomes is done winning Super Bowls, but I think he's done for a little bit. I'd say there's a good chance that over the next 3 years, 3 to 4, that Patrick Mahomes does not win a Super Bowl. Josh Allen and the Bills, I'm willing to bet that they'll make a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow and the Bengals, even though that defense was god-awful, I expect Joe Burrow to be back in a Super Bowl and win one. And eventually, Lamar Jackson. He may or may not. I don't have as big high hopes on Lamar to make a Super Bowl compared to Joe Burrow and Josh Allen out of the AFC. But you look around the AFC, there's a lot of good teams in the AFC. There are. And you got the Texans and C.J. Stroud, even though they had a slump year, but that's because of all the injuries they had, and they didn't really have a full, healthy offense. And C.J. Stroud kind of had a sophomore slump. But going forward, there's a lot of good teams in the AFC that can challenge Kansas City. And I think Philly gave them all the blueprint to do that. If you have a good, stout pass rush, and you fluster Mahomes, and you have cornerbacks and DBs that are capable of locking down your receivers, well then Kansas City's got nothing for that. Patrick Mahomes gets flustered easy. And I mentioned it, like, this is exactly what the Buccaneers did back in 2020 when Tom Brady was quarterback. The pass rush against Patrick Mahomes was unreal that day. For so many ill-advised throws, so many mistakes. Tampa Bay had their way with the offensive line against Kansas City. And Kansas City's offensive line in this game, this was putrid. You can already tell that will need to be addressed. There are good offensive linemen on Kansas City's team, but there might need to be some moving around, some moving pieces, some adjustments that need to be made, maybe in the draft or free agency. That offensive line needs a tune-up because Philadelphia just ran roughshod all over them. They absolutely bullied that Kansas City offensive line. So where are the Chiefs going from here? I think they're going to dip the next couple years. just because they don't have that dominant wide receiving core like they did. This is a very underwhelming wide receiver and running back core, but Patrick Mahomes makes a lot of things work. So we'll see coming in the future, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Kansas City Chiefs fall off a little bit of a cliff over these next couple seasons. It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't make another Super Bowl for another 3 to 4 years, just basing off how the AFC is shaping up. So now, let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles to finish off the show. Jalen Hurts has proved everybody wrong. He is a franchise quarterback, and you can win Super Bowls with him. Super Bowl MVP, 17 of 22 for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, quarterback rating of 119.7, and added 72 rushing yards and a touchdown. Jalen Hurts did prove a lot of haters wrong, and I would say I was one of them. I always thought Jalen Hurts was a good quarterback. I never suggested that he was a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow level caliber quarterback. I might be wrong, just based off his poise, his composure, the way he threw the football with such accuracy and precision and poise, the way he runs the ball. I think Jalen Hurts is making a case for a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and I'd safely put him at top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now. Just what he's been able to do, making the Super Bowl 2 times in 4 years, that's still impressive. I'll give it to Jalen Hurts, your Super Bowl MVP. He played lights out. He played out of his mind. He played fantastic. Saquon Barkley had a quiet night, 25 carries for 57 yards and six catches for 40 yards. 97 yards of offense he accounted for. He didn't really need to do much because we knew going into this game that Kansas City, if they had any shot to stop the Eagles offense, it would have started stopping Saquon Barkley, which I understand wholeheartedly. But again, if you try to shut down one person on the Philly offense, that just opens up the entirety of the field for Devontae Smith, for A.J. Brown, for Jalen Hurts, for Dallas Goedert. There's just a lot of different pieces on this Philly team. There are. So Saquon Barkley had kind of a quiet night. Devontae Smith, 4 receptions, 69 yards, and a touchdown. That's the first Alabama player to score a touchdown in a Super Bowl. Neat, isn't that? And then A.J. Brown, 3 receptions, 43 yards, and a touchdown. Now, there's no world beaters on this receiving core when it comes to the stats they put up, but just the mere presence. This is just such a well-rounded offense. And Kellen Moore did a fantastic job coaching, fantastic offensive game plan, even though he might be leaving to take the Saints job. We'll see. Obviously, nothing is set in stone, but I imagine by the time this video is up and out to the public, he may have already taken the Saints job. But I think it's possible that he stays behind and wants to run it back with Philly. And I think it's funny that the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East, along with the Eagles, they had Kellen Moore, and they ran him out of town because they were tired of his play calling. Well, Kellen Moore now is a Super Bowl champion. So I guess this is the Dallas Cowboys' worst nightmare, isn't it? And now let's really talk about the Philadelphia defense. Like I said, this was probably the most dominating performance I have ever seen in a Super Bowl. This is just unprecedented. This was just absolutely amazing to watch. Now, a lot of people don't like blowout Super Bowls, and I don't really either. The last one I remember watching was Tampa Bay against Patrick Mahomes, but at that point in time, I just wanted to see Brady humble Mahomes a little bit. So obviously that 31-9 game ended like that. But this, I feel like, was even more fun to watch just because it was all of America against Kansas City, Missouri. Everybody in America was rooting for the Eagles. And as a Pittsburgh fan, it's hard for me to do that. But anything to stop the Kansas City dynasty, I'm all for. This defense, they did not blitz the entire night. They did not have to blitz at all. They got pressure on Mahomes with 3 or 4 pass rushers. That's it. When you look at these guys like Brandon Graham, Jeremiah Trotter, and the front, like this front 7 is just ridiculous. Like, it's actually scary. Zach Bond at linebacker, I think he's only on a 1-year deal. You got Josh Sweat at the defensive end, Milton Williams, number 93. He's just a train wreck, and he just wrecks everybody. Jordan Davis, another guy. Jalen Carter, another guy. Like, when you look at this defense, it is so deep and so riddled with talent. Like, Howie Roseman literally drafted back-to-back years defensive tackles from Georgia. Jordan Davis the first year, and then a year later, Jalen Carter. Like, this is just like unreal. And then you got Nolan Smith at linebacker, who was another Georgia guy. You know, the way Philadelphia constructed their defense, they're just bringing in all the national champions from those Georgia teams from years ago. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, Jalen Carter, and you also look at guys like Milton Williams, like those guys are going to be in the NFL a long time, and they're going to have very, very productive careers, maybe even Hall of Fame level careers. And a big time shout out to Cooper DeJean. Interception, a pick 6 in this game on his birthday as a rookie against Patrick Mahomes. I think that's something very special. And when you just look at the entirety of this defense, 6 sacks, hurried Patrick Mahomes pretty much on 50% of all his dropbacks, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. You know, I'm showing you guys the play right now that this is what changed the game, and this is what absolutely sealed it. I remember that I remember witnessing a play like this in 2017 when Philly won the Super Bowl against Tom Brady, the Brandon Graham strip sack in the closing minutes. Well, this one happened with 9 minutes left, but it's a 37-6 game, and this pretty much stamped it right after.
And I promise you that. So here's Mahomes. What's he got left? Pressure again. Oh. Decked! Ball is out! And the Eagles have it!
Yeah, that play alone, that sealed it. That sealed the Chiefs' fate. I knew they were going to lose for a fact. If there was no doubt at that point in time, if there was doubt at that point in time, there was no doubt after that strip sack. Literally, total, utter dominance. Philadelphia, it would not surprise me out of the NFC if Philadelphia is the team to beat for the next 4 to 5 years in this window that they have Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Like, this team is just absolutely loaded. And this defensive front 7, even the secondary, like Cooper DeJean and Reed Blankenship, Quinyon Mitchell, like, those are solid draft picks. Cooper DeJean's already looking like an all-pro. So the drafting and development of the Philadelphia Eagles is something special. And I think if you can keep I think for Philly going forward, you have to do your best to keep the majority of the front 7 together. Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, like those guys, and Josh Sweat, like you got to keep those guys. Like that's like the main catalyst, I would say, that you got to keep. And going forward, obviously, Cooper DeJean and Reed Blankenship, they're rookies, so they'll be in Philly for a long time, and I think they're going to have very productive careers. And after all said and done, the Philadelphia Eagles take down the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up, it's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind.